Imaginary Conversation Art Journal page. The September theme for our swap page at creativeartjournaling.com was Imaginary Conversations. The goal is to do a page that illustrates an imaginary conversation. The fun part is that our swap partner gets to guess what the conversation is all about on the page. I chose a conversation I actually had in a dream. I will explain it on this video because my swap partner will have already seen the page by the time I upload this video. Hi there. I want to do a quick show and tell of my September swap page before I send it off. I'm getting it ready to mail this afternoon. Now, the theme of this swap for September was Imaginary Conversations, and the whole gist of it was that you would do an art journal page that had no text or no words to lead the viewer to determine what the page may be about, and it is the viewer's responsibility and fun to try to guess or think up what the conversation is happening, what conversation is happening on the page. Now, my conversation in this page, which I think is expressing what I wanted to express very well, was based on a dream that I had several years ago. And I think I referred to that dream several times in the process video, which if you continue watching this, you will hear me refer to it several times. At first, when I was doing the background, now before I go on with that though, I need to tell you that this page is a very shiny page. It has I have a metallic element here, which is copper foiling around the edges. I have some glass bead gel, which reflects the light, and I also have an acetate background that's peeking through here, but it does reflect the light. So I'm trying to hold it so that you can see it. But as I was doing the background, I used alcohol inks on it, and I was referring to my imaginary conversation as, do rainbows have a silver lining? Clouds have a silver lining. Do rainbows have a silver lining? Well, that was all well and good. I mean, I enjoyed that conversation, which I invented as I was creating the page. But the page itself, and I pulled the elements to basically illustrate a dream that I had. And the theme of that dream was, I'm staying in the rainbow. And I won't go ahead and bore you with my entire dream, but basically I was dreaming about a school teacher that I had. In fact, she wasn't an elementary school teacher, she was a college school teacher. I was older when I had this dream. But she was a very stern, no-nonsense person, and at the time, I was not no-nonsense. I was probably all nonsense to her, but in a quiet, rebellious sort of way. But in my dream, I dreamt that I was inside of a rainbow. Somehow I had found my way inside of a rainbow, and I was just having all sorts of fun inside this rainbow. And as I was in it, all these big bubbles of color and light would just float down around me. And although I could not see them, I could hear other children or other voices inside this rainbow having fun. Well, I also heard this stern school teacher saying, "Get out of there." And being the quiet, rebellious sort of person that I was, I yelled back, "No, I'm staying inside the rainbow." So that's what this page is meant to illustrate. And I found some images of a little girl having fun. Now, I will say this little girl looks nothing like me when I was a little girl, but she has the expression of having the fun that I was having when I was a child inside of the rainbow, inside of my dream. And here is another image, and this is just as you're looking from the back toward a little girl doing a hula hoop, and you'll see this image of the girl doing a hula hoop if you watch my video as I fussy cut her. And then you can see it in real life, if you look close, and I don't know how much you can see on the video, but there are some children playing in the park. There's a boy here and a little girl, and they're tossing a ball around. You kind of have to really look for them, or the casual observer may not know that they're there, but that's kind of illustrates what I was dreaming about anyway, because I could hear these voices. I'm not sure I really saw the faces, but I was aware that there were other people inside this rainbow with me. So I used an acetate, plastic acetate, the entire sheet, and on the back side I had played with alcohol inks. And I will say that most of that is now covered up because I needed to express the other things here. It was really pretty as I was doing it though, and people ask, well, why do you create art and then just really beautiful art and then just cover it up? Well, I think it's part of the process, and I think of that quote in my Faces book by Mother Teresa talking about a drop in the ocean, and we are all just drops in the ocean, but if the drop was missing, the ocean would be missing one more drop. And that's how I feel about my backgrounds. If I would not have done all that ink, alcohol ink on that acetate, you would not have that background in the back, little elements of it come through. There would be something missing on this page without it. That's all I can express. So then I'm not sure that that's the total reason why artists do that, cover up really beautiful art as they're working. Sometimes I think I overwork my pages, and if I could just review my videos more often, I would see, stop now, don't go any further. But as I'm working, I'm experimenting, I'm playing, I've got to see what happens if, and sometimes I do think I honestly overwork the pages. But in the end, I'm happy with them, and I think this page expressed exactly what I wanted. Over here is the Stern School Mom. Now, this part of the page is not coated with glass bead gel. On this part, it does have the acetate background, but on this part, after I collaged down my little girls and my children playing in the rainbow, I coated everything, and you will see this on in my process video if you watch it. I coated it with this glass Liquitex glass beads gel medium, and when you put this on, it's totally opaque. I mean, you just think, oh, I've wiped everything out, and basically I did. This whole 3/4 of the page was covered with this glass bead gel. Well, again, in my impatience to test and see, you know, if I could just leave it alone and wait until everything became transparent again, then I would know that it was dry. But in my impatience, I would have to touch parts of this to see what's happening here, what's happening. It's a part of artistic curiosity. And as I would touch it while it was still wet, I would find that the glass bead gel would come off on my hand, and I would have to repair different places on here. And then after that it did finally dry and become all transparent. The purpose of doing the glass bead gel was not only to give it a very textured feeling, but to give you a feeling that you're inside of a rainbow, that you're inside of water that's splashing, or droplets, water droplets. And I do think that that achieves it, because in real life, as I hold this up, those glass beads are very transparent, and they do reflect the light as you look at this. Here's the head of the little gal who's doing a hula hoop, and the head of the gal. These are the two main features of the children in the rainbow, and then there's two other children playing down here. And up here is a Stern School Marm who's trying to get little Mary to come out of the light, to come out of the rainbow. And I feel so sorry for these little students who obviously listen to their teacher. And although I have nothing against school, I think school is a fascinating place and a fun place to learn, but not here. Obviously, she's leading them down into the dark halls of knowledge. And I feel so sorry for them because they just don't look like they're having fun at all. And here's their parents waving goodbye to them up here at the doorway. And, I just, from the perspective of being inside of the rainbow and looking out and seeing a typical mean school teacher and all these sad little kids who are harassed into following her, there's no way that I'm coming out of this rainbow. I'm going to stay and play in the colors, which I basically have all my life, which is why I like art journaling, by the way. Now, after the glass bead gel dried, I did go over it with an application again of my alcohol inks, and I have some silver fixative, and this part of the page became very opaque. And while I like what happened there, I tried very hard to keep it just at the bottom of the page and let the transparency show through here. So in the end, I think that the page expressed what I wanted it to express. It's going to be mailed off to my swap partner this afternoon. Now on the back, what I did was, and I need to work with it some more here. I've got a little wax piece there. What I did on the back was, again, I have my copper foiling, and the reason I used copper foiling around the edges was I had this plastic acetate, and I didn't want to send her just the plastic acetate because it needed to be stronger. And so I collaged it down to the base of watercolor paper. This is a 140-pound watercolor paper, and I collaged it down using Liquitex glazing. That's clear gesso. I don't have it here, it's over here. The Liquitex clear glazing medium. And I chose the glazing medium because I knew it was glossy and I knew it was sticky, but I didn't know how much it would stick that acetate to the base of my page long term. So in the style of stained glass, even though this is not stained glass at all, I put copper foiling around the edges to just secure the edges of the pages so they wouldn't start ripping apart. And I've never really done that before in an art journal, and I hope that works. And in fact, doing this page has given me a lot of ideas, working with the glass bead, working with the acetate, working with the alcohol inks and the foiling. There's a lot more that I want to do using these techniques in my art journaling. You'll probably be seeing that as I progress, doing more videos. But getting back to the back, what I did is I had first wanted a red page, and I had some red acrylic ink. I believe it was by Deco Arts, and I mixed it with some clear gesso. Well, it just ended up being big goopy paint on my back and on the back of the page, and I didn't like that at all. So I just took paper towels and cleaned everything off, and then went over the entire, this is before I had anything on the page, over the entire background with black Liquitex gesso, which again gave me a surface that I could work on. And then after I did that, I wrote with Speedball white ink and teal colored ink the documentation of the swap, Imaginary Conversations, Creative Art Journaling, my name and the date. And then I drew my little dress form, which I affectionately call Mrs. Wilkins. She's my studio mascot. And I always draw her differently on different pieces of paper, but she's always a dress form and she always has this hat. Then around here, I achieved this copper feathery look by using some StazOn metallic re-inker. It comes with a StazOn ink pad like this that come into a package together. And the purpose of this is you're supposed to take, the ink pad is a dry, uninked piece of foam. and you're supposed to take the StazOn reinker and put it on there, and then work it in, and that's how you achieve your metallic ink pad. Well, I didn't do that. I just like to use it out of the bottle like this for different projects. I think I used the same thing on my Paper Dolls page. But on this page, what I did was I would put a strip of this ink down the borders, and then I would take my, I don't have it here, but my dip pen with the nibs on it, and then just go like this, and I achieved a very feathery look there. And I really like, I'll probably be doing that again too. I really like the effect of wringing those lines out and drawing them out on the page. By the way, that is a dot on the I, in case you're wondering, of imaginary. And I've got another dot, I dotted the I of my conversation. So these are not mistakes, they're dots. You dotted your I. Then around the edge, I had put my copper foiling on, and then around the edge, I just put a little, using my dip pen again, I put drew some little needlework edging, which would be a crocheted border if you were doing it in needlework itself. And I started off doing a teal color, and then over that I put a black, and then I finished it off with white. And it just kind of built up some depth on the needlework edging that I was drawing. And then I drew my little dress form in here and accented her with the white ink. And after all that was done, I sprayed this back page with archival fixative. I did not glaze over that, but so the last layer on here is fixative. So this is the finished page. Now I want to tell you about this page. It was, when it was still drying, and it was, because of the gel medium and the acetate and the collaging, I believe I collaged this down with the glazing medium, it was still sticky to the touch. And even with the fixative on there, I put quite a coat of fixative on there. And I let it dry, but based off a post in one of the art groups from the person who this is going to, she was telling how one of her art journaling friends along the way would take pages and put them between two papers and put them in the, and then put the papers, the sandwiched page between the two copy sheets, and sandwiched in between waxed paper, and then sandwiched in between books, two heavy books, would put that complete sandwich in the freezer. So I did that. I actually put two heavy books, and in between that was my page, which was sandwiched between wax paper and between two copy sheets. So that went into the freezer, and it went in for not 48 hours, I would say about 30 hours in the freezer. When I pulled it out, the page was stiff. But when I touched it, well, it was definitely very cold. I touched it, and the page was not wet, it was stiff, it was frozen. It was a frozen piece of paper. And so what I did was I took that sandwich, and I had a stack of heavy books like what I've been doing for my art journaling. And I would say overnight, in probably about 24 hours, I left it underneath that stack of books for a good 24 hours, a good entire day, in the hopes that I could simulate what would happen if this were put in an art journal, and to avoid it sticking to the page in front of it and on the other side. I'm experimenting with that on my art channel, if you've been watching my videos, of how to resolve the problems of journal pages when they're folded up in their books sticking to each other, because that is a common art journal page. And because I use glossy acrylics and a lot of collaging, a lot of mixed media on my pages, I do have that problem in my older art journals, and I'm looking for a way to resolve that. So, based on her suggestion, this page went into my freezer overnight for 24 hours, and then, well, actually for about 30 hours, and then I pulled it out and put it under a stack of heavy books for, like I said, a good 24 hours. And then when I pulled it out this morning, I had this page. I had a piece of copy paper on the front and on the back, and then I had that sandwiched between wax paper, and then I had heavy books on top of that. And when I pulled it out, I was very anxious to see would that copy paper stick to the surface of my page. And when I pulled it pulled off so nice. The only problem I had was right down here on the front of the page. Just right down here, and I think that's because of the copper foiling. It did not stick. It was just a gentle stick. It was just a little lift off of it. And it was right down here. And then I think right in here I had a little problem. But it wasn't a big problem. It was, again, just a gentle stick. So I'm going to definitely try that again. I need to get this in the mail, so I don't know what's going to happen with this page long term. If freezing the pages will solve the problem of sticky journal pages long term. I have to get this in the mail to her today, so I won't be able to see it anymore, to experiment with it anymore. So I'm going to have to pull out I think I'm going to pull out one of my older journal pages and unbind it from my journal and freeze the pages. Anyway, thank you for listening to me chatter about there. I think there you get a good view of it. Chatter about my September art journal page. I'm ready to do another October page to send off for October. Thank you for watching my videos, and after this segment, if you stay tuned, I'm going to have a lot of fast forwards. I think I have a couple of introductory that are just me talking, explaining what I'm going to do, and then I have several fast forwards through the process. So if you don't want to see that, now would be a good time to turn off the video. If you stuck with me this long, thank you for doing that, and I hope to be doing more art journals in the future. Stick with me if you want to see the process videos. They're coming up next. Okay, I'm ready to start doing my page. I use a template, an 8x10 template, and I mark around it on my page to get a sense of where my 8x10 is going to be on my base page. Then I get out some blue masking tape, painter's tape, and tape it down to my craft area. This not only secures it, but it helps the page not to warp as I use wet media. I'm sorting through my photos. This little girl with the hula hoop, I decide that I'm going to use her. This book, I think that I'm going to pull images from this book, but later on I decide not to. I sort through other photographs. I like this New Yorker magazine photograph. Sort through some others and get out a sheet of clear acetate, and I'm ready to start. Okay, I'm getting ready to use my alcohol inks on my clear acetate sheet. You can hardly see the sheet there, but it is there, and you'll see it as I start working on it. And what I'm saying is I do not want to do the arc of a rainbow, but I want to do what it would appear like if you were inside the rainbow. So now I'm just kind of loosening the caps of my alcohol ink jars so I get working with them. I won't have to stop and pry open the lid of the jar. Measuring out the acetate over the base of my page, make sure I have enough. Explaining that where I put the ink will eventually be the back of the page that I apply down, and I start applying the ink and kind of experimenting with it. I'm going for a very transparent look at first. I'm trying to achieve a transparency, but as I apply more and more of the inks, I eventually lose that. But I do try to achieve it. Now I'm shaking up some of the silver fixative, which is more of an opaque color, but I really like how it will blend those alcohol inks. You'll see that more and more as I apply more inks to my page. The ginger is just a little bit too dark. Putting on some greens and yellows and blues. There I'm blending with my silver fixative, putting in some reds, doing the dripping technique, which I don't do a lot in my art, but I think, oh, I'm getting it too opaque, I want it more transparent, so I blot all that out. But never fear, I put more ink on there. As I said, it goes to a very opaque look. Just playing with different inks on the page. In my mind, I'm thinking, what would it look like if I were inside of a rainbow? What would I see? And that silver fixative really blends the colors and brings them out. And you'll see I apply a lot of it on my page, which lends to the opaqueness of the page. Now I'm just experimenting. I'm really liking what's happening, and I just keep going. Put some more silver fixative on there. Inside the rainbow. What would you see inside of a rainbow? Now I'm putting droplets of color on there, and this is where it starts to be really fun, especially when I put on this silver fixative. Look at that. Do you not feel like you're inside of a rainbow there? So I decide to, at this point, to put it aside and let it dry. Okay, now here's my page, my ink page as it's dried. I'm very happy with it. I'm getting ready to collage it down to the base of my page, and the part of the acetate that holds the ink medium will go down onto the base of the page, and I'm going to use glazing medium to do that, mostly because I know it's a glossy, shiny surface, and I'm using it more as a glue than as a glazing medium. And I put a lot on there, just want it to secure down as much as possible. Of course, I have a little left over that I use on a tag. And then I place my acetate sheet with the ink side facing the base of the paper, so the side of the acetate that has no ink will be facing me, and I can work on it without fear of the inks blending. And I brayer it down just to get a good stick. I'll eventually have to cut this, remove the tape, and cut the page to size. I get out some books and weight it down overnight. I also clean it off just so I have a nice, clean, smooth surface to work on. Okay, so it's the next day, and I remove the page from the craft sheet and start to trim it up to a size of 8 by 10 because that's the size of our journal pages. I'm really happy with how the page is starting to take shape. I get out my pictures and start choosing the ones that I'm going to work on. I decide that I'm going to use this New Yorker magazine cover, but I want the little children that are filing into school to be in silhouette form. So I get out my Speedball ink and my dip pen, and I start shading in all those little children filing into the halls of wisdom, into their school room. I shade them all in black, and you'll see that I do the hall monitor and the parents too. Now I use the parents, but I don't end up using the hall monitor. Now I'm just shading those in. Now here I'm doing the parents. And then after all of that is done, I dry it off, make sure that everything is dry on the page, and then I'll fussy cut it out and start thinking about where that I'm going to put it on my base page there. just getting a preliminary sense of where I want this page, the school children, to go, which will be there toward the top. Now I start fussy cutting out this happy little girl who's obviously having a good time, and then I fussy cut out the mean old school marm who's making all those little kids go to school. Not that school is a bad place, but in the sense of my dream, I wanted to portray the fun that children were having inside of the rainbow. Here I'm cutting out the little girl with the hula hoop. The gist of the dream was the school teacher was saying to me in my dream, "Come out, get out of that rainbow." And I was saying, "No, no, I'm staying." So I say, "I'm staying in the rainbow." Now I start to collage everything down. The happy little girl in the rainbow, 2 kids playing in the park, my little kids that have to go to school that day. That's why they're so dark, and the mean, stern school teacher saying, "Get out of the rainbow." And I'm saying, "No, I'm going to stay." And I hear all these other kids happily playing inside the rainbow. Now I get out a medium that I haven't used, this is my first time, and it's the bead gel medium. Okay, so I give every place where the kids inside of the rainbow are a nice big thick coat of that bead gel medium, which is very opaque until it dries, and then it dries transparent. And I want the beads to represent the splashes, the little beads of water inside of the rainbow. Now you can see on the front of the page here where the glass bead gel medium is very transparent. You can see all these little beads, and it's very textured. I really like that effect. I feel like I'm inside of a watery rainbow. So I get out my alcohol inks, and I want to put some alcohol ink over that glass bead gel medium just to make it feel like more of a watery effect. Now, when I get out that silver fixative, it's very opaque, and I almost make it too opaque down at the bottom, so I try not to do that on the top area. Just working with it, I want the kids to feel like they are actually inside of the rainbow. Now I'm going to work on the back, and I get out some red acrylic and I mix it with some clear gesso, and I add some black gesso, but it just makes a hot soupy mess on the back of my page. And I get out an old tape roller and try to do some prints in there, but it's not very good, and you'll see where I eventually just wipe all of that away. Okay, here's where I'm just wiping everything off of the back. That is just one mess, and I know I can't do much with it, so I just clean up my work area. It seeps over into the front of my page, and I clean up the front of my page, clean off the edges, have a little area on the eye of the girl that I need to clean up. Then I protect the front of my page with blue masking tape because I'm going to apply some black gesso on the back so I have a nice surface to work on. Okay, here I'm just showing you the finished dried page, pointing out various elements on the page, how the texture of that bead gel medium there makes you feel like you're splashing in the water inside of the rainbow. Then I get out some copper foiling tape that one would use for jewelry and stained glass applications, and I start to apply that around the edges of my page. And I do this because I used glazing medium to attach that acetate sheet to the base watercolor page. And even though I used it as a glue, this is the first time I've really done that, and I'm not too definite sure how secure that is going to be long term, and I'm going to be swapping out this page. So I'm thinking that by applying copper foiling around the edges of my page, it will secure the page better long term. You can see I'm putting it right over the edge of the page and then folding it half on the back and half on the front, and I do that on all 4 sides. securing it down with my bone folder. And then after I do that, I further secure the page to the back by applying a strip on all four sides on the back and on all four sides on the front. I want this to be really secure on the page. I don't want that acetate sheet to eventually pull off at the base of the watercolor page. And I think that it gives the page border a really nice finished look. Sort of like you're looking through a stained glass window. After I do all of that, here I'm securing everything down with my bone folder, making sure that I'm still applying that foiling to the front. I want to make sure I get it on all four edges so everything is nice and even. So in the long run, I used four strips on, one for each side, and I did that 3 times, so I had 12 strips of tape. Then on the, here I have another side of the front to do yet. Getting ahead of myself in my describing what I'm doing. There we go. Now I'm just cutting little strips of tape and placing them horizontally along the corners of the page, and that will make it look like little copper photo tabs. All done. So I get out one of my scrap tags, and I can't bear to lose any scraps, so I apply them to my tag because I'll be using them as a background in another project. Okay, I'm still playing around with that tag. It becomes a scrap tag that I experiment with. Straightening up my copper foiling, then I decide that I'm going to work on the back of my page, and I'm getting out my speedball inks. I get out a white, a teal, a gold, and a burnt umber. Get out my dip pen and my nibs. I'm going to experiment on that tag, and that burnt umber is just a little bit too dark for me, and the gold is not quite what I want either. But that is why I experiment on a tag first, because then I can see what's going to happen on the real sheet. Okay, now I'm really ready to start on the back. I use some copper StazOn re-inker and just draw a line on every side of the page. And I take my dip pen and draw my dip pen through that re-inker, and it makes a really nice feathery look. Here I'm doing it again along the bottom. And I like how I can just draw that pen through that re-inker and draw it up and make some really nice lines going into the center of the page there. Gives it a really nice effect. And the copper re-inker goes really nice with the copper foiling tape. Draw my pen through that line along the border both ways, and to the center of the page and then to the outside border of the page. Makes a really nice border on the page. It's very fun to do. I'll probably be doing this on more of my journal pages. I really like that effect. Then I just kind of start to blot off the excess along the border there. I don't want too much of that re-inker there, and I smoosh it down on my scrap tag. Okay, I've finished the border of this. I'm just kind of showing you what the front looks like. I'm ready to do my documenting on the back. And I write out the words imaginary conversation. Because I have glazed over the back, when I make a mistake I can kind of just wipe it away and start over again, and you'll see I do that here on the word conversation. Do not like it. Work with it until I get it how I want it, until I'm happy with it. Add creativeartjournaling.com and my name and the date, and then I draw a little dress form that I affectionately call Mrs. Wilkins. She's my studio mascot. And then I start doodling some needlework crochet edging around the page. And I'll do this on all 4 borders. Now this is the last video that you'll see fast forward. My camera battery dies on me and I'm too impatient to wait for that to get charged up again. I want to get my page done. So this will be actually the last fast forward video you'll see. After this video I will put the finish of the page. I go over it in both black and white. And you'll see the finish of that page, which is actually a part of my show and tell. I'll attach that after this fast forward. Okay, here I am just applying some white accents to the little dress form just to bring her out. Decorate her up. Just kind of add some touches to it. I get out my StazOn and I distress the front and the back of the page, just finishing it up, distressing the edges. Now here's the completed piece. And this is the completed back. You can see that I finished the edges with white. I doodled white to make it look like a crocheted edging. I did that right over the black, and the teal kind of form a shadow. And I did that on the writing too. And now I'm showing you the front. I want it to have very much of a watery, I'm inside the rainbow effect, and I think that my mediums that I use, my glass gel bead medium, does that very well. There's the stern schoolmaster lady saying, "Come out of that rainbow," and the little girl is saying, "No, no, no, I'm staying." So that was the imaginary conversation on this page. I hope that you enjoyed watching this process video if you've stuck with me this long, because I do plan to be doing more art videos in the future. Thank you for watching.